Hello and very good evening to all my dear students. I hope you all are doing well. Welcome to Mother Athena School once again. This is your Neema ma'am, and today I'm going to do a very beautiful story, The Great Stone Face 1. This is very beautiful story. It is written by Nathaniel Hawthorne, and this story has been taken from your English literature book Honeydew, class 8, chapter 9. So, students, before we get deep into the story, let me first of all give you the introduction of the story. So, we all know, students, that man's interest in the myths, the ghosts, and the supernatural is very old. He is also carried away by superstitions and prophecies. The Great Stone Face is a beautiful story of a prophecy that comes true. Seen from a distance, hilltops and weather beaten huge rocks assume different shapes. Sometimes they resemble a human figure. People connect it with some imaginary story. And in this story also happens the same. Ernest, the child, was also told a prophecy by his mother about the great stone face. He was convinced that someday the man with the likeness of the stone face would appear in the village. He waited on till he grew old. He gathered so much wisdom and fame that he himself was finally accepted by the people as the greatest person with the likeness of the stone face. So, students, this is really very interesting story from which you can learn something. Okay, so let us now read the story and then I'll do the explanation paragraph wise. All right. One afternoon, when the sun was going down, a mother and her little boy sat at the door of their cottage, talking about the great face stone. They had only to fit their eyes, and there it was, plain to be seen, though miles away, with the sunshine brightening all its features. And what was the great stone face? The great stone face was a work of nature, formed on the perpendicular side of a mountain by some immense rocks, which had been thrown together so that, when viewed at a proper distance, they resembled the features of a human face. If the spectator approached too near, he lost the outline of the enormous face and could see only a heap of gigantic rocks piled one upon another. But seen from a distance, the clouds clustering about it, the great stone face seemed positively to be alive. It was the belief of many people that the valley owed much of its fertility to the benign face that was continually beaming over it. Now, students, before I move on to the next paragraph, let me first of all tell you the meaning of difficult words. Okay, let us see the difficult words over here in this paragraph. So, the very first word is perpendicular. What is the meaning of perpendicular? Perpendicular means rising very steeply. Okay, what does it mean? It means rising very steeply. Okay, and next word I can see is yes, gigantic. Gigantic, you all know, immense, very huge. Clustering means gathering, and benign means kind and gentle. Right? So, some words are given here also on your right hand side with the meaning. You can have a look. Now, students, see what happened here. One fine afternoon at sunset, okay, a mother and her little son sat outside their cottage as they discussed the great stone face. It was so big that it only required them to lift their eyes to be able to see it. पहाड़ इतनी दूरी पर था कि माँ और बेटे जो हैं, बेटे का नाम अर्नेस्ट है, अभी हम देखेंगे, तो वो इतनी दूरी पर था कि ऐसा लगता था जैसे किसी वो जो पहाड़ है ना, वो किसी का चेहरा है, किसी ह्यूमन बीइंग का चेहरा है. Although it was miles away, it could still be seen clearly as the sunshine falling on it enhanced all its features. जब उसके पर सूरज की किरणें पड़ती थीं तो ऐसा लगता था जैसे कि अब वो इंसान जो है इतनी ऊपर ऊंचाई पर, वो जो है इस presenting something, is saying something. If you may ask, what really was the giant stone face? The great stone face was a piece of art made by nature. Students, जो हमारे को ये नेचर की तरफ से जो गिफ्ट है ना, what nature has gifted to us, तो we cannot even think of doing the same thing, even making the same thing. What is gifted by God to us, it is one of the most wonderful thing. ओके जो नेचर अपने आप जो नेचर में एग्जिस्ट करता है, वन कैन मेक डुप्लीकेट थिंग्स, बट स्टिल जो नेचुरल है, जो नेचर है, इसको हम जो है नहीं डिनाई कर सकते हैं कि इट इज़ जो इतने ऊंचे ऊंचे पहाड़ हैं वो ऐसे लग रहा है जैसे इंसान है, लेकिन इट इज़ नेचर. ओके, पीस ऑफ आर्ट मेड बाय नेचर. On the perpendicular side of a mountain by the natural piling up of stone huge rocks. Now, the rocks were piled in a way that when looked at from a particular distance, it seemed like a human face. आप दूरी से देखोगे तो आपको इंसान का चेहरा ही लगेगा. But if the onlookers were to look at it from too close, they would lose the outline of the great face and would only see a pile of giant rocks. Right? So surely when looked at from miles away, as the clouds gathered around it, the great stone face looked alive. Okay? And many people believe that the fertility of the valley is also because पूरे जो वैली में वहाँ पे जो वो जगह थी जहाँ पे अर्नेस्ट और उसकी माँ रहते थे, वहाँ के सारे लोग ये बिलीव करते थे कि यहाँ पे जो शांति बनी हुई है, यहाँ पे जो इतनी हैप्पीनेस है ना, वो इट इज़ बिकॉज द काइंड एंड जेंटल फेस वॉज कॉन्स्टेंटली स्माइलिंग ओवर इट. वो जो चेहरा था ना ह्यूमन का जो रिजेंबल कर रहा था, इट वॉज कॉन्स्टेंटली स्माइलिंग, और इसी वजह से जो है वहाँ पर भी एक खुशी का माहौल था. वो उसको एक आप कह लो लकी चार्म की तरह बिलीव करते थे. राइट, नाउ नेक्स्ट पैराग्राफ. A mother and her little boy, as we said earlier, sat at the door of their cottage, gazing at the great stone face and talking about it. The child's name was Ernest. Mother, said he, while the great face smiled on him, I wished that it could speak, for it looks so very kindly that its voice must indeed be pleasant. If I ever see a man with such a face, I should love him very much. If an old prophecy should come to pass, answered his mother, we may see a man sometime with exactly such a face as that. What prophecy do you mean, dear mother? Eagerly inquired Ernest. Please tell me about it. Now students, prophecy मतलब क्या होता है? It is a statement that tells what will happen in the future, right? And gazing, it means to look steadily and intently, especially in admiration or thought. अब देखो बच्चों, यहाँ पर क्या होता है इस वाले पैराग्राफ में कि मैंने जैसे आपको बताया था कि मदर and her little son, as you know I have mentioned earlier also, they were just sitting outside their cottage, just staring. Okay, staring मतलब continuously looking at the great stone face and talking about it. उसके बारे में बात भी कर रहे थे, as you can see in the picture, right? उसके बारे में बात भी कर रहे थे. तो अब ये बच्चे का नाम क्या है? बच्चे का नाम, द सन्स नेम वॉज अर्नेस्ट. एज द ग्रेट स्टोन फेस स्माइल्ड ओवर हिम. कैन यू सी द फेस? सी कितनी दूरी पर है. इट इज़ माइल्स अवे, दैट माउंटेन, बट इट सीम्स एज इफ दैट माउंटेन इज स्माइलिंग, राइट? So it smiled over him. Ernest described his desire to his mother to hear the great stone face talk. He thought that a man with such a kind appearance must have a very pleasant voice. जो इतनी अच्छी जिसकी सूरत है तो उसकी आवाज़ भी कितनी अच्छी होगी. और वो आगे ये कहता है कि इफ़ ही वुड एवर फाइंड अ मैन दैट लुक लाइक द ग्रेट स्टोन फेस ही वुड लव हिम डियरली. तो इसकी मम्मी इस पर रिप्लाई करती है, कहती है कि इफ़ एन ओल्ड प्रोफेसी वर टू कम ट्रू ना, तो देयर मे बी अ डे वेयर अ मैन विल कम हु विल लुक एग्जैक्टली एज द ग्रेट स्टोन फेस. और ये सुनने के बाद अर्नेस्ट क्वेश्चंस हिज मदर अबाउट द ओल्ड प्रोफेसी. अब वो पूछने लग गया कि ओल्ड प्रोफेसी क्या है. नाउ so his mother told him a story that her own mother had told her when she herself was younger than little Ernest, that at some future day a child should be born near here who was destined to become the greatest and noblest person of his time, and whose face in manhood should bear an exact resemblance to the great stone face. Many still had faith in his old prophecy, but others took it to be nothing but idle talk. At all events, the great man of the prophecy had not yet appeared. अब देखो बच्चों, यहाँ पर नॉबलेस्ट का मतलब होता है मीन्स अ पर्सन हैविंग और शोइंग फाइन पर्सनल क्वालिटीज़, या फिर जिसके आप कह सकते हो कि हाई मॉरल प्रिंसिपल्स होते हैं, वो नॉबलेस्ट पर्सन होता है. ठीक है. एंड आइडल टॉक तो आपको पता ही है ना, फुलिश और इररिलेवेंट टॉक, जिसका ना सर हो ना पैर हो. तो व्हाट हैपेंड नेक्स्ट कि अपॉन बीइंग आस्क्ड, अर्नेस्ट मदर told him the narrative that her mother had told her when she was even younger than little Ernest. जब वो अर्नेस्ट से भी छोटी थी तो उसकी मम्मी ने उसे क्या बताया था, यानी कि अर्नेस्ट की नानी ने ये बताया था कि at some point in the future there would come a day when a child born near the place would look exactly like the great stone face, okay, like upon becoming an adult. And he would be destined to become the greatest and most selfless man of his time. Majority of the population's faith still lied in the prophecy, while others considered it irrelevant. कुछ तो मतलब बिलीव करते हैं कि ये हाँ सच्ची है एंड ऐसा है ना, ऐसा है, ज़रूर है. और वो आदमी जो है, जो उसकी मम्मी ने बताया था, अर्नेस्ट की नानी ने जो बताया था कि उसकी मदर को कि कोई ऐसा इंसान है, देयर इज़ अ मैन, ओके, देयर वुड कम अ डे व्हेन अ चाइल्ड बॉर्न नियर द प्लेस वुड लुक एग्जैक्टली, बिल्कुल उसकी तरह लगेगा जैसा कि वो दिख रहा है ना, माउंटेन में वो चेहरा दिख रहा है. तो कोई बच्चा जो यहाँ पर पैदा होगा इसी विलेज में, वो बिल्कुल उसकी तरह लगेगा. ठीक है, उसी की तरह, और उसी की तरह जो है वो महान भी होगा. ठीक है, मोस्ट सेल्फलेस मैन ऑफ हिज टाइम. तो बहुत लोग तो बिलीव करते थे, बट बहुत लोग इसको बिलीव नहीं भी करते थे, राइट? Whichever may be the case, the great man being talked about in the prophecy had not appeared till that time. जो भी हो, अभी तक तो वो नहीं आए हैं सामने, जो भी हैं वो सामने नहीं आए हैं, right? Now, further we see, "Oh mother," cried Ernest, clapping his hands above his head, "I do hope that I shall live to see him." His mother was an affectionate and thoughtful woman. It was proper, she thought, not to discourage the fanciful hopes of a little boy. So she said to him, "Perhaps you may." Affectionate बेटा मतलब loving, caring and fanciful, over imaginative, या आप कह लो unrealistic. ठीक है. तो ये सुनने के बाद अब अर्नेस्ट ना बहुत खुश हो गया ये बात सुन करके, एंड ही स्टार्टेड क्लैपिंग ओके अबव हिज हेड सिंस ही वॉज फिल्ड विद होप। कहीं ना कहीं बच्चे के भी दिमाग में कहीं उम्मीद थी। ही टोल्ड हिज मदर दैट ही विश्ड टू लिव लॉन्ग इनफ टू सी द नोबल मैन। मैं उस मैन से ज़रूर मिलना चाहूँगा, देखना चाहूँगा कि वो कौन है, जो बिल्कुल माउंटेन में जो चेहरा है उसकी तरह ही लगता है और इतना जो है नोबल है। Being a loving and thoughtful woman, his mother did not wish to discourage him, even though his hopes were a bit unrealistic. And what she replied? She replied, perhaps you may. हो सकता है तुम हो वो, है ना? ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि आप हो. And Ernest never forgot the story that his mother told him. It was always in his mind whenever he looked upon the great stone face. He spent his childhood in the log cottage where he was born, was dutiful to his mother and helpful to her in many ways, assisting her much with his little hands and more with his loving heart. In this manner, from a happy yet often pensive child, he grew up to be a mild and quiet youth. पेंसिव मतलब होता है थॉटफुल, ठीक है. नाउ स्टूडेंट्स, since that day, Ernest always remembered the story his mother told him, and he would always think about it whenever he looked at the great stone face. During his childhood, he stayed in the log cottage where he was born. He was responsible and loyal to his mother. And this is the way you should be to your parents. He would help his mother in doing a lot of things with his little hands and loving heart. So sweet, isn't it? He was very obedient, yet thoughtful as a child, and he grew up to be low-key and quiet in his youth. Right? Next we see, Ernest had no teacher, but the great stone face became one to him. When the work of the day was over, he would gaze at it for hours until he began to imagine that those vast features recognized him and gave him a smile of kindness and encouragement. तो अर्नेस्ट के पास तो कभी कोई टीचर था ही नहीं, नेवर हैड अ टीचर. सो क्या हुआ बच्चों? The great stone face acted as one in his life. मतलब उसके लिए एक टीचर बन गया ये great stone. Okay. Each day after winding up his work, he would stare at the great stone face for hours, घंटों तक, until he began to think that those immense features recognized him and smiled at him kindly. And this is what was encouraging him. Right? About this time, there went a rumor throughout the valley that the great man who was to bear a resemblance to the great stone face had appeared at last. It seemed that many years before, a young man had left the valley and settled at a distant seaport, Gathergold, which was his name, had set up a shopkeeper and, being sharp in business matters, had become so very rich that it would have taken him 100 years only to count his wealth. In time, he thought of his native valley and decided to go back there and end his days where he had been born. नेटिव तो पता ही आप लोगों को मतलब होता है नेटिव का कि जो पर्सन बॉर्न इन अ स्पेसिफाइड place, okay, or associated with a place by birth, right? So that means native. Okay students, अब मैं आपको एक्सप्लेन करती हूँ ये पैराग्राफ. तो उसी समय क्या हुआ कि वहाँ पे ना एक वैली में, वहीं पर जहाँ पर वही विलेज की बात कर रहे हैं, वहीं पर एक न्यूज़ फैलने लगी. ठीक है, सब लोग एक चीज़ फैलाने लगे. वर्ड वॉज स्प्रेड क्या कि दैट द वैली that the great man from the old prophecy that bore resemblance, जो उसकी तरह great stone है ना, great stone face है, उसकी तरह जो resemble करता है वो आ गया है, was about to make his appearance. Quite a few years earlier, a young man born in the valley, यहीं पर वो पैदा हुआ था, had settled at a distant seaport, ठीक है, और to become an established shopkeeper. शॉपकीपर बनने के लिए वो थोड़ा सी पोर्ट, ठीक है, वहाँ पर डिस्टेंट सी पोर्ट पर जाकर सेटल्ड हो गया था, और उस इंसान का नाम क्या था? गैदर गोल्ड, ठीक है बच्चों। और वो एक बहुत, उसमें जो है ना बहुत अच्छे बिजनेस स्किल्स थे। तो जो बाय दैट टाइम गैदर गोल्ड हैड बिकम सो रिच दैट इफ़ ही बिगैन काउंटिंग हिज वेल्थ, अगर शुरू करे ना तो उसको तो 100 ईयर्स हो जाएंगे अपनी वेल्थ काउंट करते करते। अब आप सोच लो कितना रिच। ओके, अब एट द टाइम ही थॉट ऑफ कमिंग बैक टू द वैली एज ही वांटेड टू स्पेंड हिज लास्ट डेज वेयर ही वॉज बोर्न। अब तो भाई इतने साल हो गए हैं, तो वो ये चाहता है कि मैं वापस अपनी वैली वहीं पर जाऊं जहाँ पर मैं, मेरी बर्थ प्लेस है, जहाँ पे मैं बॉर्न हुआ। ओके, नाउ नेक्स्ट पैराग्राफ। Ernest had been deeply stirred by the idea that the great man, the noble man, the man of prophecy, after so many ages of delay, was at length to be seen in his native valley. While the boy was still gazing up the valley one day and imagining that the great stone face returned his gaze, the noise of wheels was heard and a crowd of people cried, "Here comes the great Mr. Gathergold." So students, stirred means arouse strong feelings in someone. Okay, strong feelings in someone. अब क्या होता है कि ये सुनने के बाद अर्नेस्ट तो बहुत ज़्यादा, ही वॉज एक्सट्रीमली मूव्ड एट द आइडिया ऑफ सीइंग द ग्रेटेस्ट एंड नॉबलेस्ट मैन फ्रॉम द प्रोफेसी इन हिज नेटिव वैली। वो तो पहले से बहुत एक्साइटेड था, ही वॉज वेरी मच मोटिवेटेड ऑल्सो, एंड ही वॉन्टेड टू सी दैट मैन। सो वन डे व्हेन अर्नेस्ट वॉज स्टेयरिंग एट द माउंटेन, okay, imagining that the great stone face looked back at him, he heard the noise of wheels as people announced the arrival of the great Gathergold. Okay, now a carriage drawn by 4 horses dashed round the turn of the road. Within it, thirst partly out of the window appeared the face of an old man with yellow skin. "The very image of the great stone face," shouted the people. "Sure enough, the old prophecy is true. Here we have the great man at last." And what greatly puzzled Ernest, they seemed actually to believe that there was the likeness which they spoke of. He turned away sadly from the wrinkled shrewdness of that unpleasant face and gazed up the valley where the stone face seemed to say, "He will come. Fear not, Ernest, the man will come." So in this paragraph, students, shrewdness, it means the quality of having or showing good powers of judgment. Okay, and likeness, the fact of quality of being alike, right? Now what happened? The noise of wheels was made by the carriage in which Gathergold arrived. वही man जो यहाँ से पहले चला गया था for his business. Okay, so the carriage being drawn by 4 horses was stopped with force around the turn of the road. One could partly see the face of an old man with a yellowish skin tone from the open window. And अब क्या हुआ? People started shouting in excitement that the man exactly resembled the great stone face and that the old prophecy was indeed true. Now that they have the great man in the valley. Ernest was unable to understand how people actually believed that the man resembled the great stone face like it was said in the prophecy. He got disappointed. Okay, and he turned away from the wrinkled, clever and unpleasant face of the old man. कि मतलब इतना ऐसा थोड़ी ना है वो चेहरा तो बहुत यंग है जो माउंटेन में दिखता है, वो तो बहुत यंग, बहुत खिला हुआ चेहरा, बहुत ही हंसमुख चेहरा है, वो ऐसा चेहरा नहीं है, क्योंकि जो गैदर गोल्ड है वो तो बहुत ओल्ड हो गए और वो तो अपना बुढ़ापा काटने आए हैं यहाँ पर, है ना. तो he got disappointed and he just turned away from that wrinkled face. He stared at the valley where he could imagine the great stone face asking him to have patience as the man in the prophecy will come. Right. So now in my next video I'll come up with the part 2. Hope you all have enjoyed. Thank you students. Thank you very much and have a great day ahead.